So a few weeks ago, the trailer for Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey released. Since Winnie the Pooh entered the public domain, an indie studio decided to take advantage of that, and they made a horror movie that takes the Winnie the Pooh property and turns it into a horror movie. And this isn't the first time that's happened. In 2019, the Banana Splits were turned into a horror movie. And this new trend has sparked a massive debate among fans. Some argue that it's distasteful to turn these childish properties into horror movies, while others argue that it can help revive dead properties. So that got me thinking. Where do I stand in this debate? Should these kids' properties be turned into horror movies? Well, I wanted to answer those questions in this video. The first example of turning kids' properties into horror movies is the Banana Splits 2019 movie. The Banana Splits was a kids' show from the 60s. Think Teletubbies meets Sesame Street. But eventually, the kids moved on to other shows, and the franchise died. Cut to the 2010s, when Warner Bros. Was making a Five Nights at Freddy's movie, but the creator, Scott Cawthon, hated the movie's script and left the project, taking the FNAF IP with him. So now Warner had a full script for a horror movie, but they couldn't use FNAF. So what did they do? Okay, we spent a long time making the script for a FNAF movie, but now we can't use FNAF. How can we salvage this script? Frank, any ideas? We could just make a better script that would convince Scott to come back to the project. No, that would take too much effort. How about you, Joe? What? Remember that one Teletubbies knockoff from the 60s? Yeah. How about we take those childhood icons targeted towards children and make them killer robots that brutally murder people? You're a genius! Warner Bros. Took that script and made it revolve around the Banana Splits instead of the FNAF characters. And there really is a reason Scott left the movie. It is really not good. It's low budget, has unlikable characters, stupid writing, and the only reason it was talked about was because it was using the Banana Splits IP. And this is when the debate started. People were really angry that they took a show that these people grew up with and made the characters evil killing machines, ruining any chance for this franchise to be for kids again. And that's a good point. They shouldn't ruin this franchise by forever having it linked with a bad horror movie. And it definitely didn't help that this movie stopped us from getting a Five Nights at Freddy's movie. It did tease a sequel, but with it being over 3 years since then and hearing no word on a sequel, it's safe to say that this movie and the Banana Splits franchise are gonna stay dead. But a few years later, in 2022, the Winnie the Pooh franchise entered the public domain, meaning anyone can use a franchise in their own projects. And a few months after that, we got the announcement of Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey, a horror movie where Winnie the Pooh and Piglet are abandoned by Christopher Robin, and when Christopher and his wife return to the 100-acre woods, Winnie and Piglet go on a murder rampage as revenge for Chris abandoning them. And all the same arguments came back. They shouldn't ruin a kids franchise, it's not right. Think of the children. And whereas I kind of agree with the arguments against the Banana Splits movie, I am very much in support of this movie. The thing is, the Banana Splits movie was made by the people that own the IP, Warner Bros. So this was the official direction that they took the franchise, making the Banana Splits permanently stuck to horror. Cause how could you go back to being a kid's show when the main characters brutally murdered people? But this Winnie the Pooh movie, it's not being made by Disney. It's being made by a tiny indie studio with a 5-digit budget, just because the IP entered the public domain. This movie existing won't ruin the Winnie the Pooh franchise's reputation, and will in no way affect future projects. It's not malicious, the movie's just being made for fun, and to explore the dark side of the franchise. Now look, I fully respect people saying these childhood characters shouldn't be horror villains, but for me, if it's done well, I don't have a problem with it. And Blood and Honey does look like it's being done well. It takes the basic plot of the Christopher Robin movie and gives it a horror edge, and explores what if that movie was a horror movie. And even though it's low budget, it's clear the makers of the movie wanted to make a fun slasher movie, and I'm all for it. And I'm clearly not the only one, because this movie blew up. It's a new hot, popular horror movie. It's been so popular that the makers of the movie have already begun work on a sequel. And the movie was originally just going to release on Amazon Prime, like a lot of other indie horror movies, but it's now going to release in theaters, but only for a single day, being February 15th, 2023. But the interesting thing is, the studio didn't just announce a sequel to Blood and Honey, they also announced a Peter Pan horror movie titled Peter Pan Neverland Nightmare. And in my opinion, a Peter Pan horror movie is genius, because in Peter Pan there's a lot of horror elements. The mermaids trying to drown the kids, the group of boys never growing up, that freaking face. it has potential to be a good horror movie. But the thing is, I think this indie studio is a bit over their head. We've seen how minuscule their budgets are, and Peter Pan has lots of elements that require a big budget. The reason Blood and Honey can work is because all they need are some Winnie and Piglet costumes, a house, and a bit of CGI skills for the blood and stuff like that. But Peter Pan, there's magic, big landscapes, fairies, actual animals, those require a much bigger budget. But hey, maybe if Blood and Honey and its sequels succeed, they'll have enough money to truly do the movie justice. And what's so cool about this is that it has so much potential, taking public domain characters and depicting them in a darker tone in a horror movie. It breathes new life into classic characters, but doesn't change what the characters are. Public domain franchises such as Alice in Wonderland, Zorro, Robin Hood, The Wizard of Oz, the frickin' Pied Piper would all work great as horror movies. And if the Winnie the Pooh and Peter Pan movies succeed, we might just enter a new age of childhood icons turned into horror movies. And if they're done well, I'll be here for them. But what do you think? Do you not want these childhood characters to be horror movies? Do you want more movies like them? Did you for some reason like the Banana Splits movie? Tell me in the comments. And if you like spooky, scary video games, I have a video going through the history of Halloween games. And if you've enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. It helps out a lot. Bye!